It is Wednesday, October 5th, and the Give and Go show is back in your life. My name is Griffin Queen, and as always, I'm joined by Matt Modi. We're not going to have Matt Ferentinos with us this week, so I can't say, as always, joined by Matt Ferentinos. Unfortunately, Modi, it's a pleasure to see you. Glad to have you here. What's up, man? How we doing?
Doing well, living the dream.
Living the dream. Yeah, we just talked about this. We just talked about this prior to starting the recording. And we may have talked about this on a previous episode.
Yeah, who's to
so
say?
If we are repeating ourselves, we apologize. But Moda and I were just talking about how everybody has like their particular phrases that they say that are basically like off the cuff, like don't ask me any questions. I'm not going to ask you any questions.
Yeah.
Let's move on with our lives. Like living the dream, or in my case, another day in paradise. Or when somebody asks you how you're doing, you just say good and you just keep it moving. They're all in the same veil.
I'm big on not offering the I'm good, how are you? Just I'm good. Like the context we were talking about, and this is more like of my old jobs, like pre or post COVID, when it was like tons of meeting based, where like you give like 30 seconds for people to trickle in, and everyone like has their like, oh, like anybody watching some new shows, like the worst conversations that you have. But like, oh, Moda, how are you doing? Good.
We definitely talked about this because we definitely talked about the lack of like water cooler and how we absolutely talked about it.
Okay.
I feel like I'm having a stroke right now or something like that because I'm like, I know this has happened. This isn't deja vu. We've talked about it before. So we don't need to talk about it for long again. But I will say, no one ever says that they're not doing well. No one's ever like, yeah, I'm like having a pretty shitty day, because like, then what does the
other you have to like, ask, and nobody
I ask you how you're doing and you're like, man, Griff, today fucking sucks.
I'm going through it right now.
Where do I go from there? Like, do we keep recording the podcast, or do I like end the recording and like, do we like hash it out?
Yeah. Or, I mean, this is like a horrible thing, but one of my old coworkers' dad passed away, and like the next at meetings, everybody was like typical, like, oh, Tim, how you doing? And he was just like, I'm okay. Like, yeah, I'm okay. Like, I'm not going to front and say things were great. I'm okay. Like I'm alive. We're moving on.
Yeah. Like what answer could he possibly give you? Because if he's in a really dark place, you probably don't want to hear about it at work. And if he's in a really great place, you're going to be like, okay, so you're like emotionally stunted. Yeah. Like you don't have the full range of emotions. So there's no winning with that question. I'm guilty of it, but it's like, honestly, fuck everybody. Just don't ask how they're doing. If they want to advertise how they're doing, they will tell you.
Moral of the story, small talk should just be eliminated from, unless you're like first meeting someone and like on a date, there should just be no small talk. It should be gone.
It's been a long time since I've been on a first date, many years at this point. And I'm happy to probably never go on one ever again. I'll say definitely never go on one again, just in case Julie ever decides to watch this. I honestly didn't do a lot of the small talk thing at first dates. I was like, look, here I am. I'm a little bit like of a chaotic person. Let's get really like in depth about our lives. If you like me, we can have more dates. If you don't like me, it's better that you discover that about me now.
You never would have. Yeah.
Because whether or not we did small talk and beat around the bush for a few dates, or, whatever, you're going to eventually realize who I am. So let's just, put all our cards on the table. And, that's worked and it hasn't worked.
Well, you're not
clearly
single, so.
I'm not single. I've been in a relationship for 4 years. We'll say 4 years. So, it worked.
Yeah, that's good. I was never one, like, I was never big on the dating scene. I just would like, I just kind of live my life. I was never on like the apps or anything. Mostly,
you didn't miss out. They were fine.
Mostly people I met were through people I already knew. So there was like already a level of like connection there.
It was cool to have the apps come out like when we were in college, because it just made all that entire process just easier.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like and I mean, again, I've been out of this game for a long time. It definitely has had an effect on like human social interaction and the way that we like just like social media has. Dating apps have done the same thing, where it just like, it makes it more difficult to kind of like make friends in the wild, because now, or to meet a potential partner in the wild or whatever. It's so interesting. Like we've done all these things with technology to make our lives so much more efficient, and they've done so, I guess, but they've also created all these problems that like we absolutely couldn't have foreseen, and we're doing nothing about it.
It's like, it is interesting, and we can talk about this on our technology podcast.
Of course, to go, yeah, we have our NFL podcast, we have List Night, we have the technology podcast. Of course, we're going to talk about the NBA at some point, you know.
Yeah, but it's kind of like I feel like technology has made it easier to talk to anybody, and then it's also made it harder to talk to people in person because you're like, wait a minute, like what? I don't know how to deal with a real human in front of me, but like the Zooming that we're doing, we couldn't have done back in the day, but. It's like an interesting dichotomy.
That's true. We definitely could not have done that. I mean, there was, I guess, what people used to do. They used to do it like Skype, but even prior to Skype, we couldn't have done this.
It was like AIM, like when we were in elementary school.
Right, dude. Shout out AIM.
Yeah.
Oh, I miss it. I miss an away message. I wish people reading your away message and then just like not bothering you, like understand.
Oh well, you are Matt's not eating dinner with his family, so I simply can't.
Griffin's going through it right now.
Yeah, mine were like either I'm in the bathroom or I'm eating food. There's really no in between in my life.
I would occasionally post some sad lyrics and just like and sometimes it wasn't because I was in a bad mood. I just wanted to see like who's gonna react to this. Like what kind of which I guess kind of makes me a sociopath. But you know, you wanna play with people a little bit. You want to see where they're at on you.
Big troll on Facebook with that was one of my like early college, just like some dumb Facebook status just to get a rise out of people.
Yeah. Just put some emo music and go town. All right. I don't think I said this at the beginning of the show. I will say it now. If you're watching us on YouTube, which is the only place that you could be watching us, make sure you click the like button. Make sure you comment below who among our cast is your favorite. It better not be Ferentino's because he ain't here today. You could also comment your own favorite small talk, and we're going to think less of you for it. Comment something. Comment what you want us to talk about next episode. That'd be cool. We did have a couple people that commented on Twitter over this past week and brought up a couple different topics, and we'll jump into those a little bit later in the episode. But if you haven't subscribed to us on YouTube, please do so. If you're enjoying the show, if you like an episode or you enjoy the show as a whole, share it with your friends, tell people about it. Maybe one day we'll work for Bill Simmons. Maybe one day we'll be Bill Simmons. I would love to own millions of dollars of California real estate. Just putting it out there.
That would be nice.
Yeah. This one is not going to be too long of an episode, like I noted, and like it's very obvious to anybody watching. Ferentino's is not here this week. Also, didn't mention in the beginning of the show, today's Yom Kippur, which I'm fasting, even though I'm really like not, like I'm Jewish. Like I was raised Jewish and I'm like culturally Jewish, but I'm Jewish. I don't really do anything in my religion outside of Yom Kippur just because it's like 24 to 26 hours where I can basically be like, I'm on a diet, which also means that I haven't had any water and I haven't had any caffeine, which is
I was going to ask about the coffee.
Yeah, you may notice that for the first time ever on the Give and Go show, I don't have a bottle of water in my hand or a cup of coffee because I can't have either of those things right now. So I'm moody and sad and angry and tired. And at a certain point, I'm probably going to lose my voice. So we're not going to, moral of the story, this is not going to be a long episode.
Well, good for you. I go like 4 hours without anything and I'm dying.
I'm not, all of my emotional energy is going to go towards this, which I feel really bad for Julia because she's only gotten like quiet, angry Griffin today, but that's neither here nor there. Let's get into it. Couple things we wanted to talk about. We have not really talked about the Celtics Ime Udoka stuff. So I do want to talk about it a little bit. I don't want to dive into I don't really want to dive into talking about him too much is what I'll say. I don't want to talk really about the drama surrounding it. I don't want to talk about the piecemeal way that the Celtics are releasing information. I don't want to talk about the potential legality of whatever it is he did. That stuff's already out there. Everyone has talked about it. They've talked about it for 2, maybe 3 weeks, however long it's been. What I want to talk about is what we think this is going to mean for the Celtics, both for this coming year and past that year. Because when we did our preseason previews 3, 4, 5 weeks ago, we were all very strongly in favor of the Celtics being one of the absolute top tier contenders. And losing your head coach 2 weeks before preseason, the guy who in his first year as head coach took you to the finals, it could potentially change that. So I want to hear your thoughts on it. I'm going to give my thoughts on it. Off the top of your head, what does this do to the Celtics this coming season? So the 2022-2023 season, is this going to have an effect on them, or is it going to be like nothing happened?
I mean, I think it removes a championship contender. Like they're not going to tank. They're still going to be very good, but I was waffling between them and the Bucks versus coming out of the East. Now I'm not even considering the Celtics. Like I don't really see how you can lose your head coach who is as good. I mean, from what we know on the outside, it's you never really know how good a coach is. You just the team's good, so we assume the coach is good, stuff like that.
Particularly in the NBA, I would
like
say.
was Steve Kerr just did he forget how to coach for 2 years, or like
Right.
the talent just wasn't there, stuff like that. But from all accounts, like he was an assistant coach on the Sixers a couple years ago, like had rave reviews. Was an assistant coach on the Nets. Everybody loved him. So all accounts, a good coach. And even if the head coach in waiting, the Joe, I forget his name, Joe Mazzulla or something,
Sure,
some jabroni, like that's a tough situation. Like, even if he's the next Popovich, that's a very tough situation to come into, especially the fact that he's only 34 years old. So even if he is the next Pop, like maybe that'll take a couple years when you're that young. So yeah, I mean, I think like their win total didn't drop dramatically after the news announced, which I thought was interesting. I think last I checked, it was at 52.5, and I think it was at 53 or 54. To me, that's now like I'm smashing that under.
sure.
Not only because of the big part because of the Ime Udoka, but like losing Robert Williams is massive. He's like a huge part of their defense, and he's out. Like then he's like typical Celtics fashion. They made him play through an injury. Now it's like he's not recovered.
That's what they do. And
yeah,
there's an argument, and I think he may have made the argument that it's okay to do that because how often are you going to have a chance at the finals? How often are you going to have a chance at a title? But the other argument is, you're like a 26-year-old athlete. You have more years where you could potentially do this.
Yeah, and it's tough because if I were him, unless my leg needed to be amputated, I would play. Like like you said, how many chances do you get to play in the NBA Finals? But at some point, it's on the training staff to protect him.
Absolutely.
Like Tua, like it's for a different reason. It's like the whole Tua Dolphins.
Tua is significantly more egregious to me because
it's a head injury. That's
A, it's a head injury. B, it is the beginning of the regular season.
Yeah.
Like it's not the playoffs. It's not even the last, like the tail end of the regular season.
Week 4.
It's week 4.
Yeah.
And I guess the original hit was week 3. Yeah. If this guy got a concussion, and we all know he did in week 3, you have time to rest him up. Yes, it's and the NFL where it's incredibly competitive and you need to win a lot of weeks to make it to the playoffs. But the reality is, like, you can tank a couple of weeks if you absolutely have to and play a backup if your guy's brain is mush.
And the most egregious part was the second game he played was a short week, was played on Thursday. So it didn't even get a full week of rest. So yeah, that was terrible. And the fact that after the initial concussion, they're like, no, his back hurt. Oh, you're telling me that's why he was wobbly and didn't know what planet he was on because his back hurt?
Yeah. And I guess after this one, they're going to say his finger's broken. That's why he was in fencing pose. Exactly. Just awful, mismanagement of an athlete, mismanagement of their health.
Yeah.
I don't think Robert Williams is on the same scale of that, but I absolutely agree with you. Like, it is something the Celtics have done before to the point where they're starting to get a reputation for it. Whether it's on the athlete, I think at a certain point you have to take it out of the athlete's hands. A few years ago, Blake Griffin on the Detroit Pistons, crushing his body, doing everything he possibly could to drag them to get them to the 8th seed because of how bad that team was, but because of like what he essentially promised to that city and what expectations he set for himself. And Blake Griffin is not a passable NBA player anymore because of that. Like he ruined himself.
And he was amazing that year. Was like all NBA.
One of his best years in terms, and obviously the athleticism was already declining. It's been declining since the end of the Clipper days.
Yeah.
But he had put his game together in the most perfect way at that point.
He could shoot.
Same thing with Kawhi Leonard, and people went really back and forth on what was up with him. Turns out he has degenerative leg issues. And he took it out of his own hands. He is a guy who made the right choice and was like, look, if I want to continue to have a career, you guys need to watch out for my health. But that's such a rare thing. John Wall played on bone spurs in his heels for 2 years and nobody did anything about it. That's crazy.
Yeah. It's nuts. And yeah, you're right. It has to be taken out of that. Because neither of us are remotely in that same world of a professional athlete. But if I had the opportunity to play, I didn't care how hurt I was going to play. You know what I mean? Like it had to be on the coaching staff or probably not coaching staff, the trainers more
on the trainers. It's on the trainers and it's on the medical staff, the people that are paid a ridiculous amount of money to understand these things and to offer because then the coaching staff does have to come into it, because then they offer the advice to the coaching staff and they say, look, if you want this guy to be on your team in 2023, you got to make sure he rests in 2022. And it seems like so often the majority of these teams, and it's something that I'll give the Suns a lot of credit for, because back in the day, they were one of the best about this, despite being awful with so many other things.
Yeah.
They would rest guys when they needed to rest them. And the Spurs for a long time would rest guys when they needed to rest them. And it kind of changed the way the league treats these things. But there's still a lot of guys in the league who, as much pain as they're in or as injured as they are, they're going to go regardless. And you've got to take it out of their hands sometime.
Yeah.
Because just because your money's guaranteed doesn't mean that your next contract is guaranteed.
Yeah. And I think luckily he hasn't had a serious injury, but Embiid is a good example of someone who you shouldn't leave it up to the player, because he wants so badly to shake the injury prone label because of the first 3 years. Like he missed the first 2 and then he tore his meniscus in year 3. So he is like so sensitive to the injury prone label. So he played through injuries. He played through like back-to-backs, or he'll play in 3 and 4 nights, whatever.
Yeah.
Because they left it up to him. They said, if Embiid wants to play, he's going to play. And then look what happened every year in the playoffs. His body's broken down.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
anyways,
back to the Celtics.
Yeah.
They have them now at 53.5 or 52.
I think I haven't checked today. Last I checked, it was 52 or 53.
I think I'd also take the under. I think so. This year, I actually think they're not. I've removed them from the smash that over list. I've removed them from a potential finals contenders list. They're still going to be a good team. There's still a lot of talent on the team. In a lot of ways, things are probably still going to look the same. I think one of the big issues that you're going to run into, and this isn't as bad for the Celtics as it could be, but one of the bigger issues you run into is, let's say Udoka comes back next year, which is what people believe is going to happen now, although that could obviously change. Next year, Al Horford is going to be 1 year older, and he's going to be an unrestricted free agent. Next year, Grant Williams is going to be 1 year older, and he's going to be a restricted free agent. And Jaylen Brown is going to be a year older, and he's going to be on an expiring contract. So he's going to be 1 year away from free agency. Ime doing what he did and getting himself suspended, whatever your thoughts are on what the suspension should be or whatever, he has taken at least 1 year out of the championship window for this team. And he may have removed it entirely, because this team, when they make it to the when they make it, to that realm again, they might be an entirely different roster. And there's probably going to be a point where Jason Tatum's on a big contract, Jaylen Brown's on a big contract. You might have a couple other guys on really big contracts because they've got a bunch of long-term deals on there, where the Celtics owner is like, look, we didn't get over the hump in time. These guys are now, pushing 30 or on the wrong side of 30, and we're paying a ton of money in the luxury tax. We've got to blow it up. These were their best years to contend, when they were as good as they were and they were as young as they were. And the rest of the league is going to catch up in the next year or two.
Yeah. And and there's enough weirdness that it's not a guarantee that Jaylen Brown even re-signs. Like he seems to be very seriously the trade rumors that he's been a part of. Because it was Kawhi, I forget the order. Then it was Anthony Davis, and then it was this past offseason was Kevin Durant. And every time it seemed to annoy him. That's a good, as it should.
Yes, it's a business, but you're just below an all-star caliber player and you're a franchise centerpiece. Why is it always your specific name in these trade rumors? It's because it's the Celtics, and because they treat you as an asset, not as a player.
Yeah. And like the Celtics just feel like it's like a kink to them that they have to be mentioned in every possible superstar trade.
And we'll see if that's the same case with Danny Ainge no longer there.
Yeah,
it's entirely possible that will change with Brad Stevens in the front office.
But this whole Durant thing.
Yeah, that's true. But I mean, Durant, most teams threw their names into the ring, except for the absolute bottom. I mean, I think nobody really talked about it that much, but even teams like the Wizards were knocking on his door again to see if there was something to be done. And they're teams that do not have the assets or the culture that Durant was looking for.
Yeah, that's kind of the argument I was going to make, is that like I understand being annoyed, but it's also like, well, you're just simply not as good as these players. Like if you know what I mean? Like that's kind of what it comes down to. You're just not as good.
Yeah. I'm sure there's a bit of frustration from Jason Tatum never being in those rumors.
Yeah. I mean,
relatively similar in age. One of them just had an incredible set of games in the finals, and the other one progressively disappeared as they went on and had some playoff games that they took off. yes, Jason Tatum has been the better regular season player. And I think, just based on his like physical assets, he's always going to be the better player. But if I'm Jaylen Brown, I'm definitely like, why just me? Why not the guy who's always getting injured?
And Tatum's streakier too. And part of that's the reason he plays. I was having this conversation on the other show with Parlay Lock, and this was during the NBA playoffs. But Tatum is like, nothing is easy in terms of like the shot selection that he takes. Like it's like a step back, it's a fadeaway. He doesn't really shoot that much at the rim. So it feels like someone who you understand why they're streaky, because they make everything so difficult.
Tatum absolutely looked at Kobe Bryant's shot selection from 2001 to 2009 and said, this is how I'm going to play basketball, and completely ignored the fact that towards the tail, like 2000, 2003, 04, it was because he was being a selfish jackass. And then 05, 06, 07, 08, he was doing that because for the vast majority of those years, his teammates were awful.
It was pre
Jason Tatum has great teammates. You don't need to be this kind of player when you've got great teammates. No one is cluing 4 guys in on you at the top of the key.
Yeah, he grew up watching 24 Kobe, number 24
Yeah.
Kobe, and falling in love with him as everybody did, and then being like, well, that's how I'm going to play. But
I can't say anything negative about falling in love with Kobe. I'm a massive Kobe guy, and obviously not an NBA player, so I can't model my game after him. But Jason Tatum could make his life significantly easier if he just changed his shot selection.
He doesn't draw fouls. Yeah, he doesn't get to the rim. He falls in love,
and he's gotten bigger. Like you can tell how much stronger he's gotten. The guy can go through contact when he wants to. He's not Giannis, but like he could go to the line more than he does, and he loves to live by the mid range. And it's like, dude, we've kind of all established, like, as much as beautiful as the shot is when it hits, it's not efficient. You're not being efficient right now, and you're making the job harder for yourself, and you're making the job harder for your teammates.
And that's why he's so streaky, because if his shot's not falling, there's no easy buckets for him.
Sure.
And I will say, like, getting to the line and drawing contact is more of a skill than people give credit for.
Sure.
Like we've seen, like, Embiid, a monster getting to the line. Like, obviously Jimmy Butler is like probably him and Harden are like the 2 best at getting to the line. Giannis too, just because he's so massive. But then you see people like Ben Simmons who shy away from contact. And for Tatum, like Simmons, it's almost all mental. Like he's scared to shoot. Tatum, I don't really understand. It's just like a mindset thing. It just must not click for him. Like, oh, if I draw contact here, it's 2 easy buckets, a stoppage of play, and like incredibly more efficient than this fadeaway, like sidestep, whatever.
Right. And I'm sure there's probably some element of it of, he's had these shoulder injuries now for like 2 or 3 years, drawing contact, potentially dislocating the shoulder again, doesn't want to go down that road, but it's happening regardless. So either you need to sit for a while and you need to take some time off and you need to potentially look into surgeries and actually like recover, or you need to change your game around to make it more efficient. And if you're more efficient and you're scoring in a higher quantity earlier in the game and you're doing it in an easier way, you're not going to be in these games all the way till the end where something potentially could happen to your shoulder. Like, you're not going to be there anymore.
Yeah. Or you play less in the regular season.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's like tons of stuff you can do. I mean, that playoff run, he played like 2 7-game series. Like the playoff run outside of the sweep was like a grueling series. So there's nothing he could have done about that. But
sure. And it was a grueling season for the Celtics. I mean, they started off pretty terribly.
Yeah,
they completely battled back. But they had to keep that momentum going in order to battle back to that degree because of how close the standings were.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, they had to, like, the second half, they had to treat every game more seriously than most teams do.
It was essentially a must win down the stretch for them. The Heat, the Bucks,
the Sixers, they were all
within like 2 games of each other. Yeah. And that's not great for people in terms of health. I mean, like, that's the thing. Like, one of those things we don't talk about with those Popovich Spurs for 20 years and them constantly being a 20-win or a 50-win team, is not only were they constantly a 50-win team, but they were resting guys consistently so that they were not involved in those down the stretch, seeding battles. And they were not tired going into the playoffs.
Such a replicatable system that it just squeaks out regular season wins, even if the talent's not as good. It reminds me of like the Heat. I mean, the Heat were missing like all of their important players and still got the 1 seed just because they got such a good system going.
Yeah. Win the games that you're supposed to win, honestly, which a lot of teams absolutely lose sight of. And I don't know if it's a player issue or a coaching issue or a management issue or whatever it is, but I use them as an example a lot. The Wizards are a really good example. There were a lot of years during the John Wall era where the Wizards would win games that they were not favored in, or they would win games where it was like essentially even money, and then they would drop games against opponents that they couldn't get up for, teams that were tanking, because they wouldn't play in those games. And it's like, you will not have to work as hard at the end of the season and into the playoffs if you win the games that you have to win. And if it's 50-50 in the other games, that's fine. You're still going to be a high 45 or high 40s, low 50s win team. Just win the games that you're supposed to win.
Yeah. Taking care of business. It's like such an underrated thing with the NBA, because like we don't have to play in the games. So we're like, well, why can't you like get up for this game against the Pistons? But then, then you realize at the end of the year.
Yeah, right. I'm sure it's much more difficult for the actually athletes involved to be like, yeah, why do I care about beating this current Rockets team? Like, I'm going to take tonight off, and if we win, we win. If we don't, we don't.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, but if you take this game, then like you don't have to worry about that Clippers matchup down the road, like because you're already going to be ahead in the standings. I don't know. It's like I'm not an NBA GM. Who's to say?
Yeah, and I feel like part of that is nobody cares about playoff seeding anymore. It's like, oh, we're not getting the play. It's either like you get the 1 seed, you miss the play-in, or like you get 2 through 6. They don't, like, nobody cares. It's like I mean, that's a typical like LeBron thing. It's just not caring about the regular season. But I think that's also part of it is like, I think people legitimately want the 1 seed, and then after that, it's kind of like, whatever. Like as long as we're not the 7 or 8, it's fine.
Right. And I think too many players, particularly ones that have played with him, have adopted LeBron's mentality of, I don't need a top 2 seed or a top 3 seed to do well in the playoffs. And it means that by the time the playoffs get there, and we talk about this every year with LeBron teams, they're not outside of that 2020 Lakers team, but it's been like all those Cavs teams for the most part, they would be awful defensively for a lot of the season. They would play ISO ball a lot of the time. And then they'd be like, yeah, we'll just figure it out when the playoffs get here. And it's like, LeBron can do that. Kyrie can do that. Kevin Love, to some extent, can do that. J.R. Smith, you can't do that. Tristan Thompson, you can't do that. Like Imam Shumpert, you can't do that. You guys need to learn the system, or else you're going to be worse than useless in the playoffs. You're going to be a net negative. Like they would in 2015 and 2016, they were pretty good about it. 2017, 2018, they were awful about it.
The last 2 Kyrie years, that team it was the same thing. But I also feel like they took the first round as like, well, this is kind of an extension of the regular season because these teams are terrible. But then you saw the very last year when they went to 7 with the Pacers, where it was like, well, without Kyrie Irving, like one of the best scorers in the league, things are a little bit more difficult.
Yeah, things get harder if you can't turn to that guy to get you 25 efficient points on ISO ball. Like, if you actually have to understand the system and you have to have ball motion, and you're just like, hey, LeBron, get me the ball, that means LeBron's got to play 41 minutes a game. And he's done it. Obviously, he's done it. But like, what would his career look like if those, and I mean, part of it's his fault. It's obviously partly his fault. He's the leader in the locker room.
Yeah.
But if the rest of the team took things seriously and were A, competing in a lot of these games, but B, learning the systems that they're engaged in and actually having like a bench system set up that's more predicated on ball motion, because you don't have LeBron playing with the bench players, maybe they do a lot better. Who's to say? I mean, they probably still lose to those Warriors teams. LeBron probably still leaves after 2018, but he probably has a lot less fucking wear on those tires by that point.
Yeah. And I think that like, there's a lot to that with how bad teams are without LeBron. Well, it's like, if your whole entire team is one player and that's all they know how to do, which is give that one player the ball, then there's not going to be something that they can like hang their hat on or fall back to when he's off.
Yeah.
And he's got to play 48 minutes every playoff game.
I wanted to, before we I think we know where the Celtics are going to be. They're not going to be who we expected them to be. I wanted to bring up the question that Elliot had asked us on Twitter today. Let me see if I can grab it real quick. There's a lot of mentions to go through because he tagged us in a Twitter fight that he got into with somebody about the value of Victor Wembanyama. But essentially what his question came down to, and it was based on a Ryan Russillo tweet, was how many teams are saying no to giving up players for Wembanyama, realizing how good he is, especially if you watch the game last night between him and Scoot Henderson, where they were both just
Oh my God.
absurd. Like they looked like NBA All-Stars. And granted, yeah, they're playing against G League talent, but I don't care. Like
They're amazing. Yeah, they're
they're
amazing.
amazing. They understand the game at 18. Scoot might be 19. I'm not sure.
I think he's 19.
He might be 19. Okay. They understand the game at such a great level at that age, and they've already clearly got the physicality figured out, and they've got so many different transferable skills figured out. Like, how many teams are actually saying no to giving up their best player in order to get Victor Wembanyama?
You
And
mean
somebody, go ahead.
no, sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, some people were like, there's, one guy that responded was like, there's 50 guys that I would put above him. Elliot was responding and saying there's probably like 15 to 20 guys I would put against him. There are actual, in my opinion, franchise centerpieces who probably shouldn't be franchise centerpieces, but that's neither here nor there, that I would give up in order to get this 18-year-old rookie, 19-year-old rookie, whatever, next year.
Yeah.
So I guess the question is, how many players are there in the NBA that you think are untouchable in order to get him? And is it worthwhile, is the second part of my question. Is it worthwhile to tank this year, understanding that the number one pick, every team in the bottom five only has a 16% chance of getting it? It's not the tanking odds of the past where you were basically guaranteed a top 3 pick.
Yeah, the tanking part of it, absolutely, because like you said, you could have the third worst record or the worst record, and you have the same odds to get it. Yeah. I think that's an interesting thought exercise of like.
And I know I didn't give you any prep for this. We're just doing it off the dome for this one.
No, I mean that's what I was trying to pull up was the ESPN list of top 100 just to kind of see like yes, no, but I can't. It's not an easily digestible list. I couldn't find, but that's interesting because it just reminds me of when the Zion year when he came out of the draft, the Sixers had the Lakers pick, but it was top or only if it went number 1, basically. Mm-hmm. They had the Lakers pick. So like the Sixers podcast I listened to did the same thought exercise of like, okay, it's not going to happen, but in the off chance the Sixers get the 1 pick, who wouldn't you trade that for with Zion? Sure. which is kind of similar. But I mean, I feel like there's probably like maybe 10 players that you wouldn't trade for him. Like he's a generational prospect at 7'5". He had like 7 or 8 3-pointers last night. Like he can play defense. He can dribble.
He had like 4 blocks or something like that.
4 or 5 blocks. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you see who the most recent NBA player, the only NBA player ever to do that was?
No, I saw that it was like, I saw someone tweet like, you'd be surprised who it was, but I wasn't going to give them a click. So I didn't do it.
Icy hot Danny Green.
Danny Green.
Danny awesome. Green had a game where he got real hot from beyond the arc. And I think he hit 8 or 9 threes and he had, I think, 4 blocks.
I mean, Danny Green is like the definition of icy hot. He's either going 7 for 7 or he's going 0 for 7.
Yeah, there's nothing in between. Absolutely nothing in between. And people be like, "Oh, career averages like 38% free or a 3-point shooter," and it's like, yeah, but it's either 100% 3-point shooter or 0% 3-point shooter for more games. Like you're not getting him making 3 of 8 or something like that. It just doesn't happen.
It's not a style. All right, well, I have like number 1. Giannis, no, you're keeping Giannis. You're keeping Jokic. You're keeping Luka. Embiid, I mean, you're probably keeping him, but I worry about how he's
keeping Embiid. I would say I'm keeping Embiid.
But you worry about how he's going to age, but you're keeping Embiid.
Sure. But I mean, that if that's the answer to that, like you're worried about how Wembanyama's going to age.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's true. The guy, he's like as skinny as Chet.
Yeah.
So you're keeping Steph. That's a top 5. I would trade him I would take him over LeBron at this point. Like if you're looking for the future, if I'm the Lakers, like I would rather have I'm going to butcher his name. Wembanyama.
Victor. We'll call him Victor.
Victor. Yeah. Vic.
Yeah. Vic the Dick.
Tatum is tough because we just talked like, he's like, is he even 25 at this point? I'd probably take
Tatum's still 16.
Yeah,
he's gonna win. Him and Ben Simmons are gonna compete for Rookie of the Year this year.
Ongoing joke. He just doesn't age.
Yeah,
I'd probably take Tatum, but that's tough. Kevin Durant, I think I'd take Victor at this point just because of age.
Yep.
John Morant he was ranked number 9 in the ESPN Top 100. I think I'd rather have. That's tough. I think I'd rather have Wembanyama just because you don't know how like can John Morant hang in defensively in the playoffs. It's like
sure.
Like, when's the last time a team won with an as undersized as him, guard? But that one's tough. Devin Booker,
Devin Booker. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he's the next on the list too. Probably take Wembanyama, but that one's tough.
I don't know. That one's tough. I think that one's tougher for me than John Morant. I think I'd rather keep Booker than I think I'd probably keep both Morant and Booker. And there's a lot of guys in like 11 through 15 that I wouldn't keep, or 11 through 20, excuse me.
Yeah.
But I think I'd keep Morant and I think I'd keep Booker. But like, gun to my head, if I had to choose between one of those two guys, it'd probably be Booker.
Yeah, it's like if between the two, I think I agree with you on Booker. It's tough because you can't remove what the team is trying to do. Like if it's an expansion draft and nobody has, or it's a fantasy draft, whatever, you have the pick. You don't have to worry about like the rest of your roster. You're just building a franchise. It's tough. I think, yeah. I mean, I agree with you with Booker over Ja. Harden, I would take.
No, I was going to say it'd be a really great year for there to be an expansion draft, but I think we're still a couple of years away from that one.
Yeah, Seattle. Yeah.
Seattle and Vegas, I think is what's going to happen.
Yeah, that's going to be cool whenever we get Vegas.
And then the Timberwolves will come to the East, I assume.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's the way they're going to do it.
Harden, I'm taking Wembanyama. Side note, I can't believe Harden was ranked 11. Like that is way too high. He should not be 11.
I mean, for a sport that's usually what have you done for me lately? Harden, I think, is still getting a little bit of clout. Like, I think a lot of people were taking this past year as like, that wasn't James Harden. If he's not James Harden again this year, I think he's going to drop like a lot.
Yeah. He'll go to like 25.
Kind of the same thing with Kawhi Leonard. Kawhi Leonard's 12. Kawhi Leonard, it's very much based on what did he look like last time we saw him? But if he's not that guy anymore, he's going to drop out of the top 20.
Yeah, you like, it's a good point. Like, what do you put more stock into? Like someone that you never saw play, like Kawhi. Last time we saw him play, he was amazing in that playoff run. Or someone that we did see play banged up last year in Harden, but who struggled.
Yeah. I'm going to reel off the top 11 through 20 really quickly. And I'm just going to tell you if there's anybody on this that I would keep for him. And then I'll let you answer the same one. So James Harden, we said. James Harden, 11. 12, Kawhi Leonard. 13, Karl Anthony Towns. 14, Damian Lillard. 15, Paul George. 16, Trae Young. 17, Jimmy Butler. 18, Rudy Gobert. 19, Bradley Beal. 20, Anthony Davis. On that entire list of 11 through 20, I think the only person that I'm probably keeping is Karl Anthony Towns. I think I'm getting rid of everybody else.
I don't think I'm keeping any of them.
Yeah. I mean, Cat is, he would disappoint me. I know he would, but I still have this belief that like him paired with the right roster, championship contender. But everybody else on that list, too old, too injured, too much past their prime, too limited.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
there's no universe where, as a Wizards fan, I'm keeping Bradley Beal if Victor Wembanyama is available. Like, I'm not. I would 100%. Trade them 1-to-1 at this point.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, of everybody on that list, 11 through 20, I would rather have Wembanyama than every single one of them.
Sure.
Including Cat. I think he's probably the one. Like, Dame's too old. Paul George is too old and injured. Trae Young, the same undersized question. He's the only one that's young in that stretch. And Anthony Davis, it's just like, I mean, we haven't seen him play. We haven't seen him be Anthony Davis since the bubble.
If you could guarantee me bubble Anthony Davis for not even 82 games a year, for 65 games and a playoff run every single year, I would take him almost over anybody in NBA history.
Yeah.
But you can't do that. So get off the list, man.
And he's never, like, outside of that bubble, he's never shot like that before. Like the jump shot in the bubble, he's never shot like that before. Yeah, Karl Anthony Towns, I just like defensively, he'll just never be there. He'll never be there. The fact that they felt like they had to pair him with Rudy Gobert says everything you need to know about his
which
defenses.
I'm so excited for. It's going
to be fun.
This team. I am like preemptively, and I know I'm going to be disappointed because it's a Minnesota team and that's what they do. But I'm excited to watch them more than anything. Like, even if the experiment fails, I think it's interesting to, in the current NBA, try and do another Twin Towers option.
All right. Yeah, I mean, it'll be fun in the regular season. There's no chance that they're winning 2 playoff rounds.
We'll see.
No chance.
All right. There's a couple things that you said that you wanted to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, nothing that crazy. I was just listening to Zach Lowe, and he did his over-unders, and he agreed with us on smashing the Sixers, which Zach Lowe can't quit the Sixers.
Yeah.
He also, which I thought was interesting, him and I think it was Pelton were both smashing the Kings over.
Okay.
And all three of us.
I heard him talking about the Kings. I think he also was talking about how people are a little bit too down on the Kings.
Yeah, I mean, like, they went over their win total last year.
Yeah.
And in the example, like the reasons they give is like they're going to be a team, they could be the 12 seed, but they're going to be really desperately trying to win just to get the 10 seed. Like,
sure.
So I kind of made me question. I mean, not that I didn't personally bet any.
I'm not betting on it. I did bet a few overs. I haven't bet any unders yet, but I might, with 2 weeks to go before the season, I might bet a couple unders. I bet the Wizards over, which I know is stupid. I bet the Wolves over, which I feel pretty good about because Rudy Gobert is a regular season king. And their over was at like, when I got it, I think it was at like 49 or something, or like 48. Like, it wasn't anything that really stood out to me as being like, they could win 53 games and like look good doing it without even being out of the realm of question. And I hit the over for the Cavaliers, who I think were at like 46 or something like that.
Yeah, so he had the Cavs going under, but I think it was 47.5.
Okay. Yeah. And I think somebody else does my bets for me because I'm in California. So really somebody else bet, and I just gave recommendations on bets. He got them prior to some of the moves they made. So
like Spida?
Yeah.
Oh, and
but they were already projected to be like the Spida edition did not change their win total that much. I think it added like 1 or 2 wins, which to me is crazy, but I guess I don't know. Maybe they think he's a less valuable player than I think he is. I don't know.
I think at least the argument that Zach Lowe and Pelton made is that it's a harder East, and you're still having to integrate probably someone that's going to be extremely ball dominant, who we have yet see play competent defense. We all believe he can. We just haven't seen it yet.
Yeah.
And he also, I think we all took the Nuggets over, but that was another one of Zach Lowe's like hammer
the over.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, assuming they're all healthy, which they should be, I mean, they're an incredible team, even when it's Jokic and like me.
I was just going to say that even with Jokic and a bunch of scrubs, they scratched 50 wins.
50 wins, yeah. Which is, I mean, like, I know that the MVP race last season was very contentious, particularly between him and Embiid. And then, obviously I was on the Giannis side of things. But like we said when we talked about it, there was not a wrong choice among those 3 guys for MVP. And people are going to look back on it and look at the seeding for Jokic and be like, yeah, he didn't deserve this. They're wrong. That's incorrect. He was incredible. All season, he was incredible.
He also, like, it was the matter of like 2 wins, the difference between the Sixers and the Nuggets. So the seeding is tough when you should really look at the wins, not the seeding.
Yeah. And I mean, the hardest part about that was like, you could look at the win totals and all that, and who really cares about that at this point? But looking at their stats, like, they were so in line with each other in so many like specific facets, and so worlds apart in other ones, like where Embiid is as a defensive presence, even though a lot of advanced stats have Jokic being like incredible at defensive stats.
Yeah, those are wrong. Yeah, those are wrong.
We don't understand defensive stats to the point where we can use them for something like that. But then on the other side of things, like the offense that Jokic generates with the amount of assists and open looks, even like incomplete or like non-completed assists, like ones where he gave somebody a perfect pass on the numbers and then they were not able to get a basket out of it, or they like turned it into a foul shot or something like that. Like, he was historically great.
Yeah,
that MVP that argument was just it was a toxic year for the MVP.
Yeah, I mean, that like, an argument got toxic in like the year 2021. Like, that's
crazy, right?
Yeah. The offensive thing is, you really can't put enough emphasis on like how, like, Embiid is like his own orbit essentially. Like, he really doesn't make other players better. He's just incredible himself. Where Jokic is almost at LeBron level of making other players better, which I think
Embiid makes people's jobs easier.
He doesn't
make them necessarily better at the game. Whereas Jokic is like, if you're on a court with me, much like Chris Paul, LeBron, guys like that, Steve Nash, when Steve Nash's numbers weren't popping off the screen, they're guys that do those little things that set their teammates up to get paid.
Yeah. And Embiid, he'll draw coverage, but
Sure.
I mean, he doesn't give the open looks that
No,
Jokic
he's not the
does.
passer that those guys are.
No, not even. I mean,
he's
not
not
even
the game general that those guys are.
Yeah, he's not even a plus passer. Like Embiid,
Yeah.
you just hope you just hope him to get average, which he's gotten better over his career. But
yeah. All right, excellent. Anything else you want to talk about?
No, I mean, I don't really. I feel like it's been. I mean, the training camp preseason starting, but it's been
preseason started. We're one game in for basically everybody except the Wizards and Warriors, who played twice in Japan. Really not a whole lot to draw from preseason yet. Next week, I'm sure we'll have more to talk about, since I think everybody will be 3 or 4 games in. I've watched, most of the preseason games that have been on, not at the same time so far. Pistons look like they're going to be fun, but they were just so incredibly sloppy. The Knicks took that game very seriously, which
Tibbs coach team.
Yeah. I said I made a recommendation to bet on the Pistons, just because I was like, they're trying to get reps for their young players. Like, they're a team with something to like actually play for in this game. And then after I made the recommendation, I was like, God damn it, the Knicks are coached by Thibodeau.
Yeah,
they're absolutely going to try and win this game, and
he's going to play starters 40 minutes.
Yeah, I felt so dumb after making the recommendation, but that's what we can expect now. Is Thibodeau's going to drive those guys into the dirt?
Yeah, I mean, preseason bets is very difficult to get your finger on.
Yeah. I mean, Anthony Davis the other day going 11 points, 11 boards, and 2 assists in the first 8 minutes on the court, and then he finished with 11 points, 11 boards.
Yeah.
And 2 assists in 16 minutes. And it's because he basically wasn't doing anything the rest of the time. LeBron James went 0 for 7 from the field. Those things just don't happen.
Yeah, I don't think Embiid or Harden even played the Sixers first.
A lot of guys didn't. Yeah, usually you don't. Usually you don't play the first game if you're an actual starter, unless you have a lot of new pieces that you're trying to integrate.
Yeah, I mean, I guess they played tonight. The Sixers are playing as we speak.
Oh, all right. Well, then I'll let you go and maybe you watch that. Maybe not. Maybe don't watch that. I don't think it'll be good for you. Yeah, I don't think it'll be good.
I get enough Sixers in my life. I don't need preseason Sixers.
I might watch it because I still have 2 more hours of fasting to get through, and my brain hurts. So we'll see.
Yeah, if you took a walk, you'd probably just pass out in the street.
Probably wouldn't do it. Probably don't want to stand up right now.
Yeah, there you go.
All right. Well, always a pleasure doing these with you. Fuck Matt Ferentinos. I realized I didn't call you Matt at all this week, which was my perfect opportunity to do it because he's not here. I just called you Modai the entire time.
Yeah, I mean, that's what most people call me Modai, even when there aren't 2 Matts.
Have not called you Jedi Modai one single time since you made that your nickname. Don't think I'm gonna, but we'll see. We'll see if I come around on it.
Well, I'm just trying to just almost quote unquote speak it into existence. Just
all right.
Just will it, but we'll see.
One day I might just say it without even noticing it, and it'll just become the normal way of speaking. But yeah, we will be back next week, probably early next week. If you're still watching, appreciate you being here. Apologies for my kind of low energy this week. Blame it on the Old Testament. If you have not already done so, comment below, click the like button, click the subscribe button, share this on Twitter, share it on Facebook, share it on Instagram. If you like an episode, share it wherever you can, and maybe somebody else will like it. That'd be cool. And we'll be back next week. See you guys next time.
Cool. See ya.